Hello, welcome to Human Tech, a podcast about the intersection of humans and technology, as well as brain science and how the brain works, and, spoiler alert, creativity. With me, as always, I have Dr. Susan Weinschenk. Hello.
Hi.
And I'm Guthrie. So, let's get going. Today, as I spoiled earlier, we are going to talk about the science of creativity.
Yeah.
That sounds exciting.
You know, this has been on my mind recently because I just wrote a song.
You just wrote a song. Okay.
I did. Yeah, I wrote a song. I write songs now and then. Actually, this was only my second real song I've ever written, so I don't know that I would say I'm a songwriter. The last song I wrote was like 3 years ago.
So have you officially gone to the government to petition for your middle name to be changed to Dylan?
No, but I did get a copyright.
Well, that's fun.
On my first song, and I'll get a copyright on the second song as soon as it's final. I still am tweaking it, but you know, so I write songs now and then, and obviously I write a lot of books.
Yeah.
And I've been interested a lot in creativity, and because I like science stuff, I've been checking out the science of creativity.
Okay.
So first, we should probably bust some myths.
Okay.
All right. So one of the things that people think is that the right side of the brain is the creative side and the left side is the logical side.
Mm-hmm.
And since I just said we were going to bust some myths, you can probably guess I'm going to tell you that's not accurate.
So I guess taking one of the most complex biological functions ever devised and breaking it into two left and right halves that do very simple things is maybe a bit of a oversimplification.
Yeah, you know, it's you know, I don't know if you know that I did my PhD thesis on the left and right half of the brain.
I actually did not know that.
Yeah, it's called the official term for that in neuropsychology circles is cerebral laterality. You want to know what the title of my thesis was?
Yes.
Cross-modal comparisons of cerebral laterality.
Sounds great.
You have to have a title like that or they don't give you the PhD.
So. Right. Yeah, no, exactly.
But anyway, the left and right half of the brain. So there's this common notion that the left half of the brain is logical and processes language, and the right half of the brain is the creative part. And people will even say things like, oh, I'm a right-brained person or a left-brained person. But in actuality, first of all, even if something did happen in one hemisphere versus another, there's this bundle of nerves running right between the two hemispheres, right in the middle of your scalp, called the corpus callosum. And so information is passed very quickly from one side to the other. So even if it were true that certain things were only happening on one side of the brain, which is actually somewhat true, it passes over to the other side of the brain really quickly. So that's one reason why it's not true that, you know, creative people are right-brained people. And another reason is that creativity actually uses many parts of the brain, and that's one of the things I want to talk about is there's three main networks that are involved in creativity, and those networks are in both the right and the left side of the brain. So
one quick question.
Yeah.
And I'm sure you'll tell, but just, you know, quick yes or no. Does the place in the brain where the creativity occurs depend on the type of creativity that's going on?
Well, that's a more complex question than you might think. So the quick answer to that would be yes and no.
Okay, no. All right, I'm just curious. All right,
it is true. It is true that there's a certain amount of language processing that goes on the left side of the brain. That is true. And it is true that there's certain kinds of visual and spatial processing. So if we're talking about painting a painting, there's a certain amount of that goes on in the right part of the brain, and that is true.
Well, tell me about your three Well, so I jumped ahead. Tell me
No,
about.
no, no, that's okay. Because let me say one more thing about your question.
Okay.
The interesting thing is that people who are experts, people who, when we talk about being creative, so if we're talking about an artist or musician, a composer, someone who really spends a lot of time in their particular medium,
Mm-hmm.
they actually, if you look at the brain of someone who is listening to music, okay?
Right.
If it's a regular person that is not a musician listening to music, the right side of their brain it will be a little more active than the left side.
Okay.
But if it's a musician listening to music, the left side of their brain will actually be more active
Mm.
or as active as the right side. And
It's
that's
because
because
it's analyzing it. Yeah.
right,
Okay.
right, because they would analyze, the tempo and the key and the, all this other stuff that they're going to be listening to. And
Right.
same thing with art. Okay, if an artist is looking at a painting, there's a lot of analytical work going on more than someone like me who is not a visual artist at all, and I'd be looking at the painting just kind of
Aw.
spacing out.
What a pretty picture.
Or what a weird picture if it's, some kind of interesting modern art. Anyway, yeah, let's talk about creativity. So, first of all, what is creativity anyway? And there's a definition that I like that many people use. Ken Robinson uses a version of this, he does a TED talk about education and creativity, and he uses a version of the same definition. So I'm going to say creativity is when you follow a process and create an original thing that is of value.
Value to whom?
Well, that's open.
To the
Someone.
person who
To
created it, or
to someone, yes, the person who created it or somebody else. But there is some value of some kind involved. So the three pieces to that definition that I think are important are that it's a process, that it's original, and it has some value. So if I follow a process, that everybody else follows, and create something that everybody else has created,
mm-hmm.
then that wouldn't necessarily be creativity. I'm just following a process to do something. So when I follow a recipe to make coq au vin, and it's the same recipe that everybody else follows, it's a value maybe because it tastes good, and I followed a process, but I didn't create anything original, right? Mm. So you got to have all those three things.
Okay.
Anyway, so let's talk about this. I love talking about the brain networks because the when you realize what's involved in the science of creativity, it actually leads to some really interesting things you should do if you want to be more creative. Like once you know about the three networks, there's a do and don't list.
Okay.
To be more creative. So first of all, I got to ask you, do you know about the default mode of your brain?
No. Wait. Well, maybe.
Well, maybe we shouldn't talk about the default mode of your brain. We should talk about
sure. Yeah.
default modes of everybody's brain. So, there's this interesting question, like, if you're not thinking about what you did yesterday, and you're not thinking about what you're supposed to do tomorrow, and you're not thinking about this, and you're not watching TV, and you're not doing anything, right?
Yeah.
Then what is your brain doing?
Just hanging out.
So, like when
thinking about other stuff.
Well, let's assume you're not thinking about anything in particular.
Well, okay. I mean, okay.
You're awake, but you're just kind of zoned out. Like what would do you think there'd be a lot of brain activity or very little brain
Oh,
activity?
no, I think there'd be a lot. I think my subconscious would just be humming along, doing all kinds of stuff.
You're right. There's
Yeah.
actually, so the default mode is that there's actually a lot going on. And this idea that, the brain is just kind of at rest is actually never
Yeah.
true.
Well, this doesn't surprise me, but
And
then again, I've hung out with you long enough to know a little bit about the brain doing
right.
stuff. Can I tell you an interesting so I in my life I let a lot of like my thinking and stuff happen subconsciously. Like I'm just well aware that that's where it happens, and then I just take advantage of it. So oftentimes, if I'm trying to write a paper, I will think of the question. I'll go to sleep. I wake up, and then it just kind of, comes to me as I write. But here's a great example. Yesterday, I had a friend who had some car trouble, and it was determined that there wasn't enough coolant in her car, and just needed to top off the coolant, and then her heat would work, and it would all be fine. So we get the coolant. We look on the inside of the car, but the coolant basically is this giant, big container, and the place where it goes in is this very small, pretty small little hole to go into the coolant reservoir. So, we don't want to spill all over the place. What we really need is a funnel, okay? And I was like, I wonder if I have a funnel somewhere. And underneath our steps on our porch, we have a collection of random stuff. And I was just like, I just have a feeling. I have a feeling that there's
that you should look there.
That I should look there. Like that seems to be a good place to look for a funnel. Now I should mention, I live in a apartment. I mean, it's a house, but it's sectioned. So the place under the stairs is not mine. It's not my property. It's not my stuff. It belongs to the landlord.
Oh, okay.
Right. So this isn't like, it's not like stuff I've purchased. So I don't have a running inventory of what's in there. And in fact, this stuff was even there before I moved in. But I go under the stairs, and sure enough, I find a red funnel. Right? There's no and it's like there's not that much stuff down there. It's pretty random. There's no reason why I should assume that there's a funnel that would be used for like car fuel there. There's no other car stuff. There's no lawnmowers.
So do you think that you saw it before and just kind of stored that away in your brain? Is that
absolutely?
What you're saying?
Yeah. And so I had when my conscience was like, I need a funnel. I didn't know where a funnel was. I just had a feeling that, that would be an interesting place to look. And sure enough, within 5 seconds, I had a funnel in my hands.
So, okay. So that goes exactly with what I'm about to say about the brain networks. I do want to, there's one little thing you said, because initially when you started, you said you let your subconscious work on this stuff. And I just want to, a point of vocabulary here.
Oh, thank you.
And that's because I got to bring this up because sometimes people write me emails and they say, in your books, you use the term unconscious. You talk about unconscious mental processing, and that's they'll email me and say that's the wrong term. You should be saying subconscious. Unconscious would mean like brain dead.
Oh, did I say?
You said subconscious, and I'm bringing this up because in the common vernacular, in the common conversation, people often use the term subconscious. In the scientific literature, if you're looking at the research studies, they never use the term subconscious. And so that's why I use the term unconscious, because that's the term that's used in research.
Oh, okay.
I mean, that the whole subconscious, that term comes from Freud, and Freud has had an incredible influence on the popular notions we have about psychology, to the point where we use that term. But and that's a perfectly fine term, and I knew what you meant.
Yeah, sure.
But I do want to say the reason I don't use that term, I'll use the term unconscious.
From just a semantic perspective,
Yeah.
I think subconscious makes a lot more sense because so in kind of English, right? If you are unconscious, right, it would be so right. So if you got like date raped, right, you would be unconscious, or if you get put under for surgery, like you are. It's not just.
It's a state of being.
It's a state of being, exactly. Yeah. So it's hard to because you could, for example, if you get put under,
yeah,
right, you are unconscious, but there's probably kind of a lot of what the general public would call subconscious thought that's not happening, I would imagine.
I understand that, and that makes perfect sense. I'm just telling you, in the research literature, they don't talk about it that way. They talk about there are brain states.
I have a question. I have another quick question.
We haven't even talked about creativity yet. All right,
wasn't Freud like German or something?
Yes.
So this all might be just a bad translation in the first place.
That's possible. Okay. I mean, but so researchers, brain scientists would talk about brain states. You're awake, you're asleep, you're dreaming. Mm-hmm. There's even different state levels of sleep. So there's REM sleep, and so you've got different stages of sleep. There's different terms for that.
Right.
You've got, awake, which would be conscious. But besides the states, then they also then talk about, conscious thought versus unconscious thought. They would not talk about subconscious. But I understand what you're saying. But I just wanted to, it's, terminology. Okay, let's get back to creativity. So...
My funnel. That's where we were at.
Your funnel, yeah. So let's talk about that. And let's talk about the 3 networks. So in creativity, we talk about networks, meaning that creativity, whether you're talking about a creative solution about how to get the coolant into the car, or creative solution about what to use as a funnel, or if you're talking about, painting a painting or writing a song or writing a poem, whatever kind of creativity you're talking about, it doesn't occur in a particular brain structure. So for instance, we can talk about when you are talking your language, you're using a certain brain structure. When you're reading, you're using a couple of brain structures. When you're doing these different activities, when you're remembering something, there's a certain part of the brain that's doing that. When we talk about creativity, we're not talking about one part of the brain. We're talking about several parts of the brain that work together. So the term that's used is a network. And we're talking about 3 different networks. So we're talking about 3 different collections of brain structures. So the first one is called the executive attention network. So that is the part of the brain that actually we're aware of. So when you have a problem that you're trying to solve, which is a form of creativity, or if you have a song you're trying to write, or a painting you're trying to paint, when you initially think about it, right, and give it concentrated, conscious attention, there are certain brain structures that are active, and that would be called the executive attention network. And that's when you I call it stating your intention. You say, gosh, how are we going to get this coolant in here? Or you say, I wonder what I could use as a funnel, or I wonder where I can find a funnel. Or you say, I have this lyric in my head, and I wonder how that could turn into a song.
Yeah. By the way, I have the title for that song.
What song?
The song. It would be called "I Am the Funnel."
Yeah, that's not the title of my song. So the first part of being creative is to have a very concentrated, conscious intention of what you want to create. That actually kicks it off.
Okay.
So the clearer you are about that, the better off your creativity.
So the best case scenario would be I am standing in front of a blank canvas with an array of paints and brushes in hand.
No, that would not be it.
Oh.
See, that's what I mean. We think that creativity is like, oh, I'm just going to let my mind be free and wander. No, the best creativity comes when you give your brain a very particular thing to work on.
Okay, so I have a book with dots, and I need to fill the lines in.
Yeah, or I have, I've been wanting to, I can talk about painting, but I am not a painter, but I've done a little bit of painting. But, I've been thinking about doing a series of small paintings with...
About funnels.
About funnels,
yeah, it's
right.
A funnel series.
Absolutely.
Right.
Right. So
funnels and fruit baskets.
Right. So you concentrate on, that you give yourself some parameters to work with. That's the executive attention network. And that's going to really help. So the first thing is you consciously set your intention.
Okay.
Because that activates the executive attention network. All right. Now we're going to network number 2. And this is the one you were kind of starting to describe this. So the number 2 is called the imagination network. I mean, okay. It sounds like a Disney ride.
That's great.
That's it. Yeah,
great.
Someone was really using their imagination.
By the way,
God, what?
Network number 2 sounds a lot more interesting than network number 1. Executive suite network, whatever it was.
Executive.
I'd much rather have the imagination network. That sounds so
what the imagination network does is it goes through everything you know and all your memories, and it starts running simulations and for the problem that you gave it in the executive attention network.
So is this the in the shower network?
Well, the in the shower thing is interesting. We're going to come
Well,
back.
Maybe it depends on the person. I find that basically, right, I get my day started, I'm in the shower, and I'm running simulations for like everything I have to do that day. Or I start having imaginary conversations the way I'd like them to happen with,
I am going to tell you that all is not the imagination network.
Oh.
That's going to be the third network.
Oh, okay. I jumped ahead.
Well, and that's because all the stuff going on in the imagination network is unconscious.
Oh, well, okay. There you go.
Or, as some people like to say, subconscious.
Yeah, sure.
So you don't know what's going on in the imagination network. It's just doing its thing.
All right. It's having fun. It's mashing stuff together.
Yeah.
Okay.
So now I'm going to talk about the third one, and we're actually going to come back to the imagination network after we talk about the third one.
Right.
But the third one is called the salience network.
Okay.
And what the salience network does is it monitors the activity in the other 2 networks.
Okay.
And then when it finds something it thinks is particularly useful, when it finds something that the imagination network is playing around with to solve the problem that the executive attention network set, the salience network grabs that and pushes that up to consciousness.
Ooh. So that's so this is just from a little computer perspective.
Yeah.
We've started to really get into deep learning with computer algorithms.
Yeah.
Which is for those of you who don't know, and we'll probably do a number of episodes on it.
Yeah, we should do an episode on that.
Oh, we'll do a bunch. It's really hot right now, and especially for like a company like Google, Facebook. They're doing lots of stuff like this. Basically, what it does is instead of writing traditional code which is basically an endless series of, if this then that statements.
Yeah.
What deep learning kind of computer networks strive to do is try to solve problems a little bit more like the brain solves problems. So instead of, for example, if you ask it, what does a dog look like, right? You have a specialized set of computer stuff that runs a quadrillion, billion, trillion simulations to help a computer can analyze a picture. It'd be like, all right, I've identified 2 circles. Those are probably eyes. There's a mouth. All right, that means it's probably an animal. After it's an animal, well, it's brown. It has fur. Okay, it's got like a long nose. Okay, that's good. It has paws. It has these little stick things. They're probably paws. It has like a spot or 2. Well, compared to all the billions of pictures that have been uploaded into my giant neural simulation network thing, I've concluded that this picture is in fact a dog. We're reasonably confident that there's a dog here, and so that's kind of the next. I don't want to say the next big thing, but that's kind of the next big logical jump when it comes to computer software and kind of getting more human-like answers and reactions from computers. But what you just mentioned. That's something else. That really requires that's a very, very difficult problem to solve. So for example, and maybe science doesn't know this, but I thought I'd ask. It says it grabs things that would solve the problem that the other network is having. How does it know? How does it quantify what that is, or make a determination that this is indeed a quote-unquote good idea?
Yeah, I don't know that.
Yeah, science may not know.
Science may not know. But what we know is that it does
That's hard.
decide that some things are good ideas and should be brought up.
That's a really, really advanced calculation that I can't even begin to imagine how it manages to do that.
So I want to go back to your shower thing.
Mm-hmm.
So given that this is the 3 networks and this is how they work, here are some things we know are important if you want to be more creative, Okay. Basically, how can you work with those 3 networks instead of against the 3 networks? Because if you can work with the 3 networks, you're going to be more creative, right? So when you were in the shower and you were running the simulations,
yeah,
and you were getting ideas.
Yeah, think about work. I'm like, I should like.
So is that
cook today or something?
Right. So and you said, oh, that's my imagination network, and I said,
right.
What do you think I was trying to tell you?
Yeah, sure. Right. No, I mean that's it.
If it was actually your salience network, right. Bringing up to consciousness what your imagination network had worked on. Now, your imagination network might have started in the shower, but when it became conscious, then it's your salience network.
Okay.
So one of the things we do know, though, is that you do have to, once you give, when you give that executive attention network really concentrates on it, if you want to actually have the imagination network go do its thing and then the salience network pick things up from that, you have to let go of the executive attention network. As long as you are focused on it, the imagination network can't do its thing.
Oh.
So you have to let go. Well, you have to set the intention, and then you have to let go and go do something else. And in fact, the something else you do,
right,
the less, not only do you not want to use your executive attention network on the problem, you actually don't want to use your attention network at all. So you're much better off if you can
sleep.
Go to sleep.
Yeah.
Take a nap, or do something that doesn't require, taking a shower doesn't require a lot of thinking. Going for a walk, maybe, or
eating
working
oatmeal
in your garden. Just something. A break from using your brain. And even if you go and work on another problem, it's still hard for the imagination network to do its thing, because every time you're working on something, you're kind of giving a different set of instructions to your imagination network. So basically you're saying, imagination network, I'd really like to do this series of artwork about funnels. And it goes, okay, well, I'll get to work on that. And then the next thing is 2 seconds later, imagination network.
Right.
I need to figure out how to pay my credit card bill this month, right? So you've already, it's like, oh, okay, I'll figure that out. And then it's, trying to do that. And then it starts having to divide its work amongst 47 things.
Okay, so here's a question. Again, science may not know the answer, but so when the imagination network is coming up with ideas, is it an evolutionary process, or is it a kind of pipe process? So what I mean is, if you think of, for example, the way a computer solves problems, like the processor, right? Every like a quadrillion million times a second, it's getting more information, a new command, right? And it just churns. So is it taking a single idea and kind of molding it like a piece of clay, and being like, okay, so maybe we need to make it better, or well, this is pretty good, but let's adapt it, let's change it, and let's modify it? Or is it just like like a quadrillion times a second mashing random stuff in your brain together? It's like dog, monkey, funnel. No, like dog, funnel, or sorry, no, I don't want dog. Car, funnel, like sky. No, like funnel, porridge. No, until it like runs into something useful.
Yes.
Okay.
It does both.
It does both. So it kind of. So it randomly. So
it'll be randomly churning through stuff.
Just evolutionary.
It'll take one idea and kind of fiddle with it while it's still looking for other ideas. Yeah, it's doing all this stuff all at the same time. Now, interestingly, all right, so we said one thing we know that would help is you got to let go. You got to turn off your executive brain as much as possible. Another thing that's interesting is that the more body of knowledge you have, the better your solutions will be, which makes a lot of sense, right? Because it's just going through your brain. So, so the more you know about that topic or any topic.
Can I just say?
Yeah.
I can't wait to hook my brain up to the internet, so my Imagination network has the entire disposal of all human history at its command.
Well, yeah, but it has a lot of wrong information too.
Oh, but think of all the great answers I'd come up with.
Yeah, but think of all the bad answers because you were connected to bad information. All right, so yes, so body of knowledge is important. We said we know taking a break is important.
What, you think that my brain knows only correct stuff? I got lots of wrong information in my head.
Well, maybe in your head.
I can't even remember what I had for lunch 2 weeks ago.
My brain has only correct stuff.
Oh.
I didn't say your brain is only
correct. Okay.
And then the another thing I guess I want to mention is that because you're likely to get, the salience network is likely to pull things up from consciousness, at any moment, right? Mm-hmm. Typically, when you're not working on it, you got to always be ready with paper and pen, your phone, so you can record something. I mean, you have to. These ideas are going to pop into your head like at random moments, and you have to recognize that that's your salience network working, and you gotta grab that before you lose it. So you should always be ready. To write down ideas that you have. Oh, and one more thing I want to mention. We tend to think that constraints are bad, but constraints are good. Some constraints are really helpful. So, for instance, if I ask you to write down anything you can think of that's white.
Yeah.
And you do that. In fact, why don't you do that? Can you tell me? You can talk out loud.
Okay.
What are things that are normally white?
Things that are normally white. I got my screen, snow, sheep, cars, crayons, T-shirts, cotton. There's stars, paintings.
Okay. Now I'm going to tell you that I want you to list foods that are white.
Ugh. Foods that are white.
Yeah.
All right. White chocolate. Chickens.
You're proving me wrong.
There's not a lot of white
Don't
food.
Do this to me. Mushrooms.
Mushrooms are not white. They're brown.
Milk.
Milk. Yes.
There's white asparagus.
It's not. It's barely white. It's like pinkish.
All right. What you were supposed to do
You
is
picked the tough one.
It was supposed to be easier because I gave you constraints.
There are very few foods that are completely white, though.
You know what I think we have proven on this podcast?
If you wanted to do like red foods.
Do you know what we've proven on this podcast episode?
What?
Your brain is not normal.
Oh, no, that's completely true. Yeah. So just for the podcast listeners out there. So she's got like these little, tests and stuff that you always do to like, oh, yeah. And like, this is an example of your brain doing this, right? And, for like 98% of all the other people out there, they do the thing like, oh, yeah, that's cool. And I'm always like, no, wait, that's not what happened to me. It's always different. So... yeah,
no.
my brain does weird stuff.
We'll have to hook you up to an fMRI one of these days.
Probably,
anyway, when you put some constraints on a situation, for most people, it actually means they can come up with
I think the audience knows that there's very few white foods out there. I think that's perfectly fine. Right. White asparagus.
Fine. I do this in my classes. It works fine. But yeah. What can I tell you?
It is weird. Yeah, you probably shouldn't have me just doing that.
No, in fact, I may never ask you your opinion about any or an example about any of this.
Yeah,
stuff.
we need to be able to phone a lay person.
Anyway, that's creativity. So what we should, what we could do.
What?
Maybe at some point we'll play one of my songs.
Yeah, sure. Maybe at some point. That's exciting.
It's fun. It's interesting when I'm, and I've had other people who write music and do other creative endeavors tell me this is typical. It's like they can't, once the song starts coming to them, it like they obsess over it. Like they can't stop until they've got it done.
Sure.
It's kind of another interesting aspect of the creative process.
Just in general, if people want to learn more about creativity, any suggestions to our listeners?
I hate to say this, but they should check out my section on creativity in my latest book, which I don't usually like to say that,
Why? It's a podcast. We're doing this to promote ourselves.
I know, but I usually like to give them other resources, but actually I think I've got a great chapter on creativity in my book, 100 More Things. Every designer
No, it's fine. Everyone, go buy her book.
The 100 More, though.
Yeah.
The second book has the chapter on creativity.
We can promote ourselves. It's fine.
Oh, all right. Go buy my book.
This isn't. We're not. Yeah. No. This is our podcast. You got it.
Go buy all my books.
Yeah. In fact, you should buy all of the products and services that we offer at theteamw.com.
Whoa! Let's just get real direct here. This is good.
Well, I don't mind pandering. It really doesn't bother me at all.
Okay.
So that's a little bit about creativity.
Yeah.
And
now you know what we need to do?
What?
Go take a nap. Oh, we didn't set our intention. So when we're go decide what you want to solve and go take a nap.
No, that's exactly what I do. I do have one more question.
Go ahead.
Kind of a little outro question.
Yeah.
Where does all this stuff fall when it comes to dreaming and and I don't want to get too much into dreaming because I know it's a whole big thing. But specifically, I have dreams where I'm in control. I forget what the kind of, it's like I'm kind of in control. What's that called?
What do you mean you're kind of in control? You mean when you're aware that you're dreaming?
I don't know if I'm aware that I'm dreaming, but I'm in a basketball game, and I can kind of decide what I'm doing.
In the dream.
Yeah, I have like some control over what it's about or like what I'm doing.
That's kind of what is. It's a portion of what's meant if you use the term lucid dreaming.
Yeah. Yes. So is that some sort of control I have over like the networks going on?
Yeah, it's a totally different thing.
Okay. Well, never mind then.
But yeah, I mean, we could do a whole podcast just on dreaming, although I don't.
I'm sure we will.
I somehow would have to relate that to tech, though. That would be kind of interesting. But basically, when
human tech, we could just do the human part.
When you're dreaming, you're processing information and deciding what you're going to forget and what's going to go into memory. I'm
almost always in all my dreams. Usually, sometimes they're boring. Like I'm just waiting at an airport for like 8 hours.
Yeah,
that's just kind of stuff. But the vast majority of my dreams, I am superstar, superhuman. I often generally have superpowers, saving people, doing that kind of stuff.
Really? See?
Yeah, I have telepathic powers in a lot of my dreams. Actually.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah. It's kind of like a Magneto Star Wars combination.
And tell me, Guthrie, how long has this been happening? No,
I'm really
okay.
not kidding. My dreams are awesome.
Got Freud.
I'm like saving people and like fighting armies.
We said your brain wasn't normal. So.
I know. It's really okay. Well, here's the thing, because right, like sometimes I'm playing basketball, right?
Yeah.
And like I'll trip over someone's foot.
Yeah.
And like in my bed I'll like flail around
yes.
And I'll like wake up.
Right.
So
but we do know your imagination network is working on things during sleep, whether dreaming or not dreaming. So it is connected to creativity a little bit.
In some way. Shape or form. I mean, I guess that makes sense. If sleeping would help you with the creative process.
Yes.
Then it should be running during sleep.
Yep.
Wow. Okay. Any other things you'd like to add?
That's it. Go be creative. Turn off your brain.
Yeah, go be creative, everyone. And again, this is Human Tech. You should all go check out our website at theteamw.com. I think we set our own rules here. So if we want to do a podcast about dreaming, it doesn't have to. We can do it on whatever we want.
All right.
And if we want to shamelessly promote your books.
We can do that.
We can do that too.
All right.
And hopefully everyone out there has had a lot of fun with this episode. I know I did. And we'll get back to you again soon. Thanks so much.